First graders, it's Mrs. Lamb. We're back for CKLA Listening and Learning, Domain 3, Different Lands, Similar Stories. As we've discussed, people around the world love listening to and telling stories. So far, we've studied 2 sets of similar stories from different lands. The first set of stories had main characters that were treated poorly at first, but were ultimately rewarded for their goodness. The second set of folk tales all had main characters who were thumb-sized. Yes, the first story being Tom Thumb, which originated in England, next being Thumbelina, which originated in Denmark, and lastly, Isambushi, which originated in Japan. The folktale we will hear today has been told orally all around the world for hundreds of years. The story was published long ago by 2 German brothers by the names of Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, which means that they and this story come from the country of Germany, as you'll see right there on our map. We'll be reading the story, Little Red Riding Hood. Have you heard that one before? I thought you did. I like this one too. Listen carefully to the folktale to find out what directions the little girl receives from her mother and what happens when the little girl doesn't follow them. Once there was a sweet little girl who was loved by all who knew her, but most of all by her grandmother, who could not do enough for her. Once her grandmother sent the girl a cloak with a red velvet hood. The little girl was so pleased with the cloak that she cherished it and wore it every day. So she came to be known as Little Red Riding Hood. Well, I wonder what they called her before she got the cloak. Maybe that'll be something to look into later. One day, her mother said to her, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandmother is feeling sick. I would like you to go and visit her. Take her some of the cakes we baked yesterday. They will do her good. Go quickly and do not stop along the way." "I'll do just as you say, Mother," promised Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood started on her way. Her grandmother lived in a house in the woods, half-hour's walk from the village. Little Red Riding Hood had only just entered the wood when she came upon a wolf. The wolf longed to eat Little Red Riding Hood for lunch, but Little Red Riding Hood did not know what a wicked animal he was, so she was not afraid of him. "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf. "Good morning, Wolf," she answered kindly. "And where are you going so early?" he asked. "To my granny's house." "And what's in your basket?" "Some cakes we baked yesterday. Grandmother is sick, and the cakes will make her feel better." "And where does your grandmother live?" "In the woods, a short distance from here, in a cottage under 3 big oak trees," said Little Red Riding Hood. Said the wolf as he thought to himself, "What a tasty morsel this little girl would be, but she's not big enough for a meal. I must find a way to eat her and her grandmother too." The wolf walked along beside Little Red Riding Hood for a while. Then he said, "Why, look at all the pretty flowers. Why don't you stop and rest and pick some of them? You're hurrying along as if you were late for school, yet the birds are singing and everything is so pleasant here in the woods." Little Red Riding Hood looked up and saw the sunlight dancing on the leaves of the trees. She saw the lovely flowers around her and she thought, "I'm sure Grandmother would be pleased if I took her a bunch of these fresh flowers." Forgetting what she'd promised her mother, she left the path and went out of her way into the woods to pick some flowers. Each time she picked one, she saw others even prettier further on, and she strayed deeper and deeper into the woods. As to the wolf, he hurried straight to Grandmother's cottage and knocked on the door. "Who's there?" said a little voice. "It is I, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf, trying to sound like the little girl. "Oh, lift the latch and let yourself in, dear," said the old woman. "I'm too weak to get out of bed." The wolf lifted the latch and swung open the door. Before Grandmother could realize what was happening, the wolf gobbled her in one mouthful. Then the sly wolf dressed himself in her nightgown and nightcap. With a wicked grin, he got into the bed and pulled up the covers. It was quite a disguise. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood had picked up all the flowers she could carry and found her way back to the path. She walked on quickly until she came to Grandmother's house. She was surprised to find the door open, and as she stepped inside, she felt very strange. "Oh dear," she said to herself. "This morning I was so glad to be going to see my grandmother. Why do I feel so frightened now?" She took a deep breath and called out, "Good morning, Grandmother!" But there was no answer. She went up to the bed. There she saw her grandmother, or so she thought. The wolf had pulled the covers up under his chin and pulled the nightcap down to his eyes. Little Red Riding Hood thought her grandmother looked very strange indeed. "Oh, Granny," she said, "what big ears you have!" "The better to hear you with, my dear," said the wolf. Said Little Red Riding Hood. "Granny must be very sick indeed, for her voice is much deeper than it used to be." "And Granny, what big eyes you have!" "The better to see you with, my dear." "And Grandmother, what big teeth you have!" "The better to eat you!" cried the wolf as he sprang out of bed and swallowed Little Red Riding Hood in one big gulp. After his meal, the wolf was feeling stuffed. He lay down on the bed and went to sleep and began to snore very loudly. A hunter who was passing by the cottage heard the snoring. "My," he thought, "the old woman sounds terrible. I better look inside and check on her." The hunter walked inside and saw the wolf. He instantly noticed the wolf's big belly and realized that the wolf had eaten the old woman. He knew he had to set her free. The hunter set them free, and out jumped Little Red Riding Hood and Granny. "Oh, I'm so grateful you saved us," said Little Red Riding Hood. Granny too thanked the hunter for his kindness. Then the wolf woke up. He was so shocked to see all the people standing before him that he ran away, never to be seen again. Little Red Riding Hood sat down with her grandmother and the hunter, and together they ate the cakes that Little Red Riding Hood had brought. And Little Red Riding Hood said to herself, "After this, I shall always do as my mother tells me, and I shall never leave the path again, not even to pick pretty flowers." The end. Whew, that turned out good for them, don't you think? Me too. Let's have a brain break before we get into some questions about the story. Today, we're gonna play the wiggle card game. I'm gonna show you the card, and then I'll pause so you can read it yourself, and then I'll read it to you, and we'll do what the card says too. You ready? All right, so here is our first card. Step forward. All right, let's go ahead and step forward. Just one good step. Good job. Okay, let's try another one. Howl. Are you ready? Can you howl with me? All right. Oh! I liked your howl too. Okay, I've got a couple more. And it says, grab your collar. All right, so go ahead and grab your collar. Give it a little pop. All right, there you go. All right, let's do another one. Let's see, how about tug on one sleeve. So go ahead and tug on just one sleeve. Get a good tug. All right, last one. Last one says, turn around. So go ahead and turn around all the way 360 and sit down. Okay, so now we're all brain braked and moved a little bit. Let's get into some questions about the story Little Red Riding Hood. Why is the main character called Little Red Riding Hood? Yes, you're right. She's called Little Red Riding Hood because of the hood that she wears, the cape her grandmother gave her. So Little Red Riding Hood wears a little red hood? Oh, that makes almost too much sense. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But so, what instructions does Mother give Little Red Riding Hood? Yes, she tells her to go straight to Grandma's house and do not leave the path. So, Little Red Riding Hood's mother tells her to go straight to Grandmother's house. Did she listen to her mom? We know she did not listen to her mom, and the wolf ends up getting to Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's house before her, and they get all gobbled up, but then they get rescued. So my question to you is, how does the hunter who saves the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood discover the wolf in the first place? You're right. He was snoring. The wolf was snoring in his full stuck sleep. So yes. So how does the hunter find the wolf? The wolf was snoring. Do you know anybody that snores that loud? You do? Boy, I don't know anybody that snores quite that loud, but pretty close. All right, so I have one more question for you. As we know, folk tales sometimes teach lessons like fables, and this folk tale has a very good lesson of don't talk to strangers and to follow your parents' directions. We do see that, and we can apply that to our lives, but could you tell me, could this story really happen the way it's presented, or is it fiction? Yes, this story is fiction, and we know that because, well, for one, wolves don't talk, and for two, if you got eaten by a wolf, I'm pretty sure that's the end of the story. So this story is fiction. It could not really happen. Good job. Excellent job reviewing the story and answering these questions with me. I do have one word that we heard in the story that I want to discuss with you a little more closely, and that's the word cherished. Say the word cherished with me. Cherished. Now, cherished means really appreciated or cared deeply about. It could be something or someone. And in the story we heard, the little girl was so pleased with the cloak that she cherished it and wore it every day. Have you ever cherished someone or something? You have, me too. What I want you to do is I want you to go find someone you cherish and tell them, I cherish you because, and tell them why you appreciate them and they're so important to you. In our story, we heard that Little Red Riding Hood cherished her grandmother and went to visit her while she was sick. That's an excellent example of showing someone how you cherish them. So now you've told someone, I want you to think about something you cherish. And I want you to draw a picture of it. And with your picture, you're going to say, blank is something I have cherished because. So you need to explain why this item is so special to you. Well, first graders, I have cherished our time together today. And please, please, don't be like Little Red Riding Hood. Make sure you listen to your parents. But until next time, bye.